your place on fire. I'ma make it burn, I'ma make it burn.
The institution of slavery covers one of the most intense and vital periods of labor history. A little scraping of almost any part of the capitalist world reveals layers of blood-soaked cultures from labor history. From Africa to the fields of Latin America, from China to the desert of Mesopotamia, traces of the whip can be traced worldwide until recent times. In this sense, the whip is one of the tools that has left its mark on human history, even if it has been forgotten today when the body is sanctified. Perhaps the whip has returned to the abstracted school mind or the alarm clock of the waking owl. Some studies argue that the beginning of the exploitation of human being is at the same point as the exploitation of animals, and that the history of animals and human beings, the object of exploitation, are read together. According to these academic studies, the first objects of the whip were most likely animals and humans. The whip doesn't kill. It has a stimulating effect. It trains the consciousness of slavery by making pain part of the work. The whip is an integral part of slave becoming. Something about it goes beyond the body and directly disciplines consciousness. However, the alarm of cell phone that wakes one up work doesn't destroy the illusion that one is an individual and has a respectable body. The whip also engraves the perception of the superiority of the master in the consciousness due to the fear it produces, whereas the programming of the cell phone doesn't harm the self-perception of the worker, which is the need of the postmodern consumer culture. The whip acts as the alternator of the period when the body was the means of production and the machine was not used. It is similar to the warning systems found in some alternators. They increase energy and direct it towards a point. The body, which is used to produce traditional power, can transform and direct its energy thanks to the whip. The centrality of corporal punishment, such as flogging to the master-slave relationship, is that traditional power sees the producer as an object, a slave. At this point of power, the producer is not yet a consumer. The wall of life has not yet turned into a capitalist market, which is why flogging has a place in religious rituals as well as punishment, but it is not the instruments of discipline that cause the most devastating and lasting damage to enslaved people. It is the chronic and acute physical damage of forced labor. The tools of discipline and control, which are the evolution of each other, cause harm. But their primary purpose is to keep the work going. The whip and the cell phone are tools of communication necessary for the workers' control and maintenance of work. Yes, the whip is also a communication tool that commands through pay. In another article, Tyson, Fleischman, and Oldroy, examining the records of more than 150 plantations in the US in the mid-19th century, mentioned that enslaved people were divided into groups. This was a fundamental attitude not only in the US, but also in Australian slavery practices. Planters used a range of techniques to organize and control slave workers on their plantations. The open and visible nature of punishment and the announcement of cries during whippings to other enslaved people are traditional expressions of disciplinary practice in power. The old political system in which power manifested itself in ostentation and pomp and derived its power from this ostentation. Foucault explains in his work The Birth of the Prison. In times when the sharp boundaries of the self were not produced, when the self was not the main engine power of the economic system based on consumption, when the body was used only as a production power, the theatrical display of punishment, which today can be perceived as degrading, is an ordinary situation. The majority of the free people of that day could empathize with the suffering of an enslaved person to the same extent as today's people can when a glass is broken. An enslaved person is an object whose existence is no different from any other object. In fact, for most capitalists today, a worker is also an object. He can be worked without insurance and his rights can be violated. They can be called during non-work time without respecting their family environment, and they can be obliged to keep their cell phone on at all times. The whip applied to today's white-collar workers is the cell phone. The cell phone has become the new instrument of domination with the evolution of the whip, the disciplinary tool of traditional power, into surveillance-based power. The cell phone, just like the worker of postfordism, is a multi-skilled apparatus of power, a commodity both in itself, what it produces and the way it is subjectivized. The cell phone is the pinnacle of control, as it is the pinnacle of ergonomics. As Jung-Chul Han puts it, it is also an instrument of psychometrics. It enables psychopolitical behavior control and data flow to companies. Since Lefebvre, it has been known that space is involved in productive forces and the division of labor. It is related to property and is associated with institutions, culture, and knowledge. Space is also the dispositive of power. Spaces are practical in the subjectification of people and produce the boundaries of biopolitical processes. The boundary between office and home disappears, especially in undeveloped, non-unionized countries with weak labor rights. The cell phone, which unites spaces for the capitalist, has transformed all spaces into office. Infiltrating the private sphere of a white-collar worker, the cell phone can bring the voice and even the image of the chef or boss into the bedroom. The cell phone eliminates distinction of time. According to Zerzan, dividing time into sections through clocks is a practice of power, a dictatorship. While the capitalist supervisor can reach the worker in a space, make his voice heard and dominate him thanks to the cell phone, the domination of working time over the worker can continue as brutally as in the factories of the 19th century. Goffman's studies on the practices of everyday life have traditionally focused on face-to-face communication. However, the advent of the cell phone has revolutionized this dynamic. The fact that simultaneous communication is now portable thanks to the cell phone has led to profound sociological shifts. In his work, Foucault traced the evolution of power from traditional to disciplinary and then to a society of control. Traditional power was characterized by overt oppression and domination. Disciplinary societies operated within a set program, a discipline, thanks to the tools of biopower. However, as Deleuze points out, surveillance societies function not through repression but through normalization. This normalization, these relations of force that unite in space-time, are what we consider normal. For instance, it's normal to be in class at a certain time, but it's also normal to be called by a cell phone after class and be summoned to work. The cell phone, therefore, is a key player in this normalization of societal control. The relationship between cell phones and people today is based on addiction. The mobile phone has the power to reorganize all leisure time. The problem is that in countries where the law remains on paper and its influence in life is weak, it takes over and occupies the living spaces of workers in favor of the employer. Remember that your cell phone is also a whip. Break its grip on you, respect yourself, and create spaces of seclusion. The cell phone is the approach of all the powers, from the boss to the father, right up to your ear. I wish you all a free day where you are not dependent on your whip. Goodbye.